Bannon's War Room, military intelligence, people, proves stolen election in multiple states. This is military intelligence. One of the primary oxymorons, right? Was that the idea? Okay. Former Army captain, military intelligence. So, no clearance, but presidential trend map. Sounds scientific. Okay. This is Bannon's War Room and military intelligence is going to prove to you people once and for all. Listen up. Come on now. It's proof.
Let's focus.
Wait a minute. Steve Bannon's lost weight.
Initially on Arizona and Georgia, because
let's start there.
These are the ones that are specifically in play, and then we'll go around the world. But tell our audience kind of what your statistical approach is.
So I'm a 30,000-foot data analyst. I'm going to go over the
Wow. Where do you buy pants?
entire county, the entire country, county by county, as we have.
Yeah, that's what you do. Just do. That's what you do when you're a 30,000-foot analyst. You go over the entire country, county by county.
Slides that show that, and I'm able to see based on historical trends. Some of these going back.
Historical trends, which none of them include a pandemic full of mail-in votes.
Over 120 years. Based.
Where none of them include a pandemic with mail-in voting.
On population growth based on party registration where that's available, and that's available in places like Arizona.
And it's available in all states.
And able to quickly identify where the data is off, where the trends are off, where the trends have been reversed or interrupted against what registration numbers may say. Can really identify locally for these audit groups where the biggest issues are and what.
Right, and where we can stop Democrats from voting.
What the best low-hanging fruit to chase is, so we have.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit, clearly Democrats.
Fruitful audit. And in Arizona, people need to look back at history and understand about Arizona. It's one of the biggest Republican strongholds that there's been since World War II.
Well, yeah, that's because they've done their best to limit voting the entire time, and now unfortunately having mail-in voting and having no excuse absentee voting allowed for a lot of the Democrats to vote there. And of course, changing demographics, and of course, not the same population as right after World War II. But please go on. 30,000 feet.
Won by the Democrat candidate two times in 1948 and 1996. But in 96, when Bob Dole managed to lose Arizona, he still carried Maricopa County.
Yeah, but that's...
Trump carried Maricopa County in 2016 with fewer...
Yeah, and when nobody knew who he was.
Fewer votes than Mitt Romney had in 2012. So to believe the number that's certified in Arizona, you'd have to believe that Donald Trump decided to gain a Republican record of 248,000 net new additional votes in 2020, just so he could turn around and lose this county for the first time in 72 years.
Well, no, you have to recognize that that mail-in and absentee voting, and the fact that people were feeling their vote was going to be denied, and the fact that the first time he won as an unknown entity, and the second time he won, we had 600,000 people. We were losing like 100,000 people every 6 weeks. That kind of tends to motivate people in a way that and of course, 100 years ago, demographics.
So what we have on the Biden increase column, 338,000 vote increase over Hillary Clinton's increase, and over her total, just so they can win the state by 10,000 votes. So from a data perspective, that's what you see is they needed every single one of these votes, the stuff that the Cyber Ninjas talked about the other day, just to get over the top.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's in any swing state. Either party needs all the votes that are there for their party.
So that is why people looking at Maricopa County without a knowledge of their history should understand why people are up in arms about these numbers.
Well, no, they're just pissed because they lost.
Do you look at, Seth, how the votes for president track with some of the down ballot stuff?
Absolutely. I think that if we really laid all the cards on the table, the entire country, I think you would see a pickup of at least 5 Senate seats for Republicans. You would have Perdue in Georgia. People aren't talking about Perdue, but on November the 3rd, he was pushed out of the 50% threshold by about 14,000 votes. So he...
Yeah, again, more people with more access to vote raises the numbers. The votes that have been suppressed are the Democratic votes in for years. So when you finally lift that oppression, you're going to find that everybody who can vote does vote, and you're going to start losing these swing states in a way that reflects the shifting demographic. So you got an extra 100,000 people in an area, and that means you've got 40,000 of them that can vote, and then you've got half of those folks go one way, half go the other way, and one group leans a little more the one direction, and you do that over a series of counties. Yeah.
So he would have won on election night
if he hadn't lost. Sure, that's true. Yeah, can't argue that.
For the massive amount of fraud that occurred in Georgia.
No, the massive amount of fraud that occurred in Georgia, if it did occur, only benefited Trump and kept him within biting distance. He was losing horribly.
And then you have Jason Lewis in Minnesota. You have Mark Ronchetti in New Mexico. You have probably Martha McSally in Arizona, and absolutely John James in Michigan. Plus, the House would have flipped Republican as well. There's a couple governorships. Dan Forest.
Yes, if they hadn't lost, they would have won. I'm glad we're covering this.
Would have been the governor of North Carolina. That's a state that few are talking about, much like Texas, where the numbers are just tremendously off.
Every time you poll it, it starts moving Democratic, and then every time they have an election using the ES&S machines, it magically flips back. That's kind of strange, don't you think?
But because Trump still carried those states, it's stuff.
Yeah, he ignored it because I guess he bought enough votes in that state.
That's really ignored, which is why we have these offices everywhere.
By the way, just so you're not confused, that's not Texas. They're graphics guys behind.
Yeah, this is why I think the work David Clements is doing on going around to all 50 states and get audits done is going to be so important. We're going to be
very important. Get ready for some pushback from Republican senators who don't want you to look too closely at the numbers in Texas, Florida, Ohio, and Kentucky. Just
talking with him.
They're going to get a little nervous, a little bit of flop sweat.
Him soon. What
information other than statistical trends that have stopped going your way do you have as evidence?
Your take on Georgia? Is it worse? What's of the 6 battleground states? What's the one that jumps out at you the most in terms of anomalies?
Yeah, what's the big one we're losing?
They're all pretty bad. Like.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
You've said on the show many times, Wisconsin is the easiest one to prove, given that most of the point fraud occurred in 2 counties. Nevada's.
You mean where all the people are? All the black people?
Same way since.
Yeah, it's amazing how all the big fraud didn't happen in all the tiny little counties that went to Trump.
Most of their votes come from Clark, but I would say the one that disgusts me the most is Pennsylvania.
Yeah, clearly.
And the reason why is because they have a very predictive indicator of the trajectory of their next election, which is party registration. The Democratic Party in the Midwest, in the industrial Midwest, the Rust Belt as we call it, is going extinct. Republicans had a net new voter registration advantage of 21-1 in the last 4 years, which perfectly indicated Trump's victory in 2016.
21-1?
Yep, 242,000 new Republicans registered. 12,000 Democrats. So,
yeah. How many overall in the whole state, though? I don't care how many new people you bring in, just because people are shifting jobs and moving around or went back home during the pandemic and registered to vote. Tell me how many Democrats. Well, I mean, let's look it up. Let's see. Let me pull this over here. One of them may try to get a thing. Okay. Party registration. Pennsylvania. Let's see how many. Voter registration statistics. Voters turned by district. How's it up? PA voters statistic. Voter turnout presidential election 2016. Okay, that's just the voter. There I go. Let's see. I gotta find a. Let's see. Pennsylvania has pushed the kind of voter registration. Okay, here it is. McCall, there you go. This is 2020. Republicans continue to eat away at Democrats' voter registration advantage in Pennsylvania. So let's see. One gauge is here. Secondary map. Party affiliation. There you go. And by the way, I love when they do this as if these aren't the red ones aren't all the empty states. So here's 3,000 voters in this one. Here's 31,000. That's fairly good. Warren County. It's plus 22%. 55,000 people. What's in Allegheny? 937,000 people. Dems by 29%. How about this? 148,000 in Lackawanna. Dems by 26. Here's Philadelphia. 1.1 million. Dems by 64%. And then the outlying area, Dems by 3.1, Dem 0.6, Dems by 14%. And the number of people, 225,000, 247,000, Dems by 13%. And then we go back over here, 23,000, Republicans by 42%, which still means you've got 5,000 Dems adding to the number in this one. And you've got a bunch of 12% in here. I don't know what, I wouldn't call that a deep red if Republicans are at 64%, and then the rest of the place is by, is other, 12%. 14,000 people, 28,000 people. Here's a fairly big one. Blair County, 79,000. Still, Dems have 21,989 voters in that county. Republicans have 48,000. And other is almost 10,000, 9,840. These are some hard red numbers. And they only go that way, by the way, if you judge the Republican number against the Democratic number only. So that's good. And then this little guy, Fayette, Dems by 7. It's 81,000 people in that state, or in that county. All these light ones are, slight separation. And even still, there's a 3.8% between the Republicans and Democrats here, but the other is 6,613. There's 11% of the voters in that area. So that's a swing county. That's a swing county. This is a swing county. This is a swing county. Lean red, and this one too, technically speaking. So let's see. Yeah, this is Democratic registration advantage. And this is the registrations. This isn't how they ended up voting, by the way. Just because of the registrations doesn't mean that even these Republican areas voted for Trump this time around, which more grew since 2019. This is, and again, this is their growth, plus 4% in the growth, not in the overall. Still 64%. Which party grew more since 2016? Not quite as big a deal. Quit morning call. I'm not interested. Lady sleeping in a car, other stuff, weird little news stories, an apology from, what? So I don't see an overall number. This is by county, but okay, so let me, this is bugging me. I want to find out the actual number. Let's see, Dem and Republican, voters in Pennsylvania. Let's see. Voting election statistics. That was Department of State. Voter registration statistics archives. That's registration. Democrat or Republican. Let's see it here. That's the county. Majority of. Let's see. Overall. These are the counties. I don't want the count. Okay. Yeah. Here you go. Here's this, and that's 2004, and even though they've registered more by a percentage, they've done it in smaller counties. This is the kind of breakdown of the vote in 2004. But even in 2004, and this doesn't count the growing number of people in here, the Dems are ahead 3.6 million to 3.1 against the Republicans in the state. That's 2004. And you got a bunch of people in those, what are red counties, essentially, who are pretending they didn't vote Republican because of George Bush. Let's see, political geography, where each, 7 political systems, blah, blah, blah. even in the areas where they're breaking it down in here, 2012 to 2016, here in these areas, Dems won by 250. This is the mid-zone. There's a tie between 250 to 250. There are areas like Philadelphia where the Democrats won by 500,000 votes or more. The statewide margin was over here in the pink somewhere, but the Republicans just barely cleared 250 in any area. But tell me again about how it's pissing you off that you guys can register a bunch of people, but every time the Democrats come out and register just a few more, they still hang on to their voters.
So 60
in the
counties
state of
turned more
Pennsylvania?
Republican.
By the way, they're re-registering people when Trump came in that they had lost because of Bush.
Pennsylvania.
Is that in the state of...
Pennsylvania was not a nail-biter state. This was an easy 400,000 vote state. So that one makes me the sickest.
No, it wasn't. You can register that many people. Still doesn't take you over the top.
Georgia's pretty bad.
So
Biden-
let's stay on that.
Yeah, don't bring him back to it. It's going to get embarrassing.
Stay on that for a minute. When you do
By the way, this is not a map of Pennsylvania, just in case.
your county by county, what pops out at you there? Where was it all counties stole, or was it Philly County or what? Where Bucks
Yeah, it's Philly County,
County? Wherever
the black people are.
It was a 67 county operation. So you have an operation to shave Trump totals in the rural counties and in the suburban counties and in...
No, you didn't. In the rural counties, they weren't curing ballots. The only people that actually sued in Pennsylvania about being disenfranchised as voters were Republicans who had their mail-in votes kicked out by Republicans who were trying to drive down the mail-in vote because they knew most of the people that mailed in were Democrats, most people who voted in person were Republicans. And if they could turn down as many of the mail-in votes as possible for any reason whatsoever, they could guarantee the county for Trump. And that's what they did. We looked at this so many frigging times. They were freaking out in all these Pennsylvania counties about the number of mail-in votes coming in. So all their election watchers, their only job was to kick mail-in votes to the curb.
Then in these Democrat Siberia counties where they have
Democrat Siberia counties, they're run by Republicans.
absolutely no support anymore. So instead of Trump having 80% margins, or 80 to 20 kind of wins, you have 65 to 35 kind of wins.
Yeah, because people were sick of him.
I did a show recently where I looked at Butler County, Westmoreland, Luzerne County. And by the way, Luzerne County has gone to the winner of Pennsylvania in every election since 1936, regardless of party.
So what you're telling me is that Donald Trump is a next-level fuck-up and can screw up a free lunch.
And then York County. And just in those four counties alone, I estimated that Trump's margins were cut by 62,000 votes in a state.
Yeah, it is completely understandable that in three counties there are 62,000 people who went, fuck this guy.
Where he supposedly lost it by 80,000 votes. So it was a 67 county operation. He still managed to trend a few counties out in the West more Republican, but only 20 counties overall were more
Yeah, because of mail-in voting. Because they couldn't get rid of all of it.
Republican than they were in 2016.
And a bunch of demoralized Republicans didn't feel like voting because people were dying all around them.
Despite 60 of them becoming more Republican in registration, which was...
No, people coming back home who voted in 2004 and 2000 or voted as independents for Trump or called them or told pollsters they were Obama voters when they fucking weren't.
perfectly predictive in 2016.
No, it isn't.
That he would flip the state.
Could you account for this simply
I can. I just did.
through a higher voter turnout?
That is the excuse. So
That's the reason. Mr. 30,000 foot view.
every statistical indicator that's been good for decades, if not more than a century.
Yeah. None of them included a pandemic where no excuse mail-in voting was made available to every voter.
Is being
And where the county officials in all these red counties could guarantee they could knock down Democratic votes, not by denying machines in Democratic areas, but simply by throwing out as many mail-in votes as they could, because Trump had told all of his people to not only vote by mail, but also to show up on the day, so no matter what, their vote counted.
being explained away as high voter turnout. We know that the coronavirus pandemic was was exaggerated to allow for relaxing the integrity of the voting laws.
The integrity of the voting law. You mean allowing all the registered voters who've been on the rolls for years to vote by mail?
Pretending absentee ballot.
Yeah. If you'll note, hey, asshole, can I, if I may, Jesus Christ, if you're going to make the case that a bunch of, like, the Dems used COVID to cheat in the election by having a bunch of brand new voters appear out of fucking nowhere to vote in this election to give the state to Joe Biden, then you can't make the case that Dems have a lower new registration number, and that's the reason you think you should have kicked ass. If the case you're making was true and a bunch of bullshit votes showed up, the registrations, because they've done recounts, they check the rolls, even these red counties, it's not like they don't fucking look. They would have registered a bunch of brand new Democrats, shit tons of them. It would be more suspicious if the registration numbers he was touting a moment ago were reversed. You would have more of a case for fraud if there were 225,000 brand new Democrats registered and only 21,000 Republicans. And you go, how the fuck did that happen? Trump was so popular. You could coax yourself into that fantasy, but at least you'd be able to make the case that these 225,000 new Democrats were fake or bullshit or made up or exaggerated or, or were screwing with the system. But you can't. Because you just made the case that Republicans kicked everyone's ass in new registrations, whereas the people that voted in this election in Pennsylvania are the same fuckers that voted in the last one, and the one before that, and the one before that, and the only new people there were 21,000 spread all over the goddamn state, and by no means enough to change the margin. Do your own fucking math, Mr. 30,000 feet.
Ballots. But
How, honest to God, I can't be the only one that spotted that ridiculousness. How do you shit the bed in your own argument that quick?
you'd also in Pennsylvania need to believe that when Barack Obama, after 8 years of a Republican administration that finished very poorly, with all the wins back, all the unions supporting him, record minority turnout, soft Republicans, that Trump is not only going to go blow by Obama's total in the state with a declining population, but also Joe Biden is going to go blowing past Trump's total in a state where the Democratic Party is massive.
Got news for you. There were Obama voters that voted for Trump. Those guys came back. So that's a minus for Trump and a plus for Biden. There were people everybody who liked Biden Obama voted for Biden. And then there were a bunch of people who might be soft on the edges, didn't like Obama, thought Jeremiah Wright shit or a bunch of Marxist nonsense, or he was a community organizer, which means commie. All those folks don't have that fear about Joe Biden, so they fucking voted. And also, they got to vote from home. That's your statistic. That explains every extra vote in the goddamn state. And there were none. They were just the regular registered Democrats.
Massively being walloped, and they're actually still being walloped to this day.
No, they're not. New registrations aren't brand new magic people. They didn't all turn. You didn't get everybody who turned 18 who's suddenly a conservative. You got a bunch of people who hated Romney or got pissed off or were Bush voters who were embarrassed. That's what all these assholes in these counties in Pennsylvania who call themselves other, that's what you're talking to. When they have a good candidate, when Trump comes up and they're like, yeah, I'll vote for this guy, so all of a sudden they register as Republicans. But this time around, they were registered, and then they just went, fuck this, I'm not voting for him again.
Where are you taking this analysis next?
Up his poop chute.
It's going all over the audits, the audit channels, the America First audits. We have a ton of traction. People in all these states that nobody.
Yeah. There's the asshole statistic in all these states. There's a good 9% of people who, flat earthers and no-vaxxers and Robert Kennedy Kool-Aid drinkers. They're all like, yeah, I totally. Dude, don't tell me the first part of your argument. I'd rather believe it.
Nobody's talking about places like Washington State, Oregon, places that we've kind of written off as so-called blue states where there's.
Yeah, go out there and argue that, look at all these red counties. I mean, there's nobody in them, but still.
Tremendous.
Land is more important than voters. We're the Republican Party.
Anomalies. So Trump up 363,000 votes in Washington State.
This is by the way, look at this fucking voter fraud. This is U.S. voter fraud map. Clean. This is green, like in areas where no one lives. Clean, likely yellow, rampant. Fucking Alaska. What's up in Alaska? Obviously, California. It's all Mexicans, clearly. It has nothing to do with the fact that Los Angeles and San Francisco and Sacramento and all these things are like enormously, huge population centers. Nah, man. Upland's the problem. Down here, out chunks of Arizona and New Mexico.
State when the Republicans couldn't budge for 3 straight elections. So there's massive traction, new Big Tent type voters. But of
All
course,
right, Seth, do me a
There are none of those things. Seth is talking out of his ass, and it's adorable.
favor. I wanted to.
Yeah, do us a favor. Go back to that part where the Democrats only registered 21,000 new voters, and the Republicans registered 225,000 new voters. And the people that voted in, the Democrats that voted in Pennsylvania have voted through multiple elections and continue to do so. And yet there were magic votes from nowhere for Democrats, even though they would have come from people who vote every election.
Hang on, we're going to take a break now.
That's amazing. I have to say, I gotta admit, occasionally when these come up, I'm like, one of these days, somebody's gonna pop an accusation or a piece of data that I just, I'm not ready for, right? In theory, there's got to be something, right? Where I'm just like, oh shit, that's an interesting. I didn't realize I have no way of verifying whether or not there's panda shit in these ballots. But there's, and when this one goes, like from the title, military intelligence proves. This guy's using statistical averaging and a completely fucked up math concept that inverts his actual argument on Pennsylvania. And then says, oh, multiple states. Why multiple states? Oh, because Washington State and Oregon can't possibly be blue. I mean, there's an argument to be made that more than half the violence on the streets of Portland is right-wing violence. I'm sure he's taken a good look at that. But I'm just saying, in Seattle, you're going to have a real hard time convincing me in the big population centers in Washington State that. But the rest of the state is, it's Republican. There's like 15 people in the counties and some dude in a fucking log cabin in the middle of nowhere with a crawl space full of dead bodies. But, I mean, I'm sure he's a staunch Republican. You know what I mean? Like, that's what Common Core math does for you. Texas can handle every Republican in the U.S. and send them there? Or maybe. Oregon has 2 area codes, one for Portland, one for the rest of the state. Yeah. Military intelligence is going to waste time trying to overturn an election and get charged with treason. Yeah, titles they do kind of matter. Former military intelligence surveyor. I mean, the guy wasn't a consultant. There's a big difference in military intelligence with the consultants and the actual number crunchers and the guys who are actually data collectors on the phones. You know what I mean? There's a need to know basis, and if you're not at the level where you need to know, you're not really making the kind of like the higher decisions. And if you're passed over repeatedly because you're kind of an asshole and all your assumptions are bad, and you keep kind of pushing stupid ideas, and then they ditch you, and then you end up on Steve Bannon's War Room bitching about how Oregon's really a red state. Fucking hell. Anyways, I find that fascinating. I mean, I suppose there's got to be a way where in some of these areas, they have a better case to be made, and it might leave me with a head scratcher, and I have to go look some shit up. But so far, I haven't seen it. I mean, honest to God, each time Mike Lindell puts out one of his new movies, I'm like, oh, maybe he's got a little more shit this time. Maybe this one will be maybe the math gets harder the more of these you put out. And it actually gets easier. It gets dumber. God damn, it's annoying. I'm amazed. I'm frigging amazed.